good enough to get us fed for lunch and then back in here. Planning to be done around 3 o'clock today. Please pray for our children's workers here today. They've got quite an ordeal in front of them. I've had quite a few that volunteered to come, and I'm very, very thankful for them to be here. We know that's a big reason why we had more than expected, is because we provided childcare, and it makes it much easier for you guys. So I'd like to start us off with a prayer, and then I'm going to hand it over to Trey after that. And again, just thank you guys so much for being here. Let's pray together. Father, thank you so much for this day. And Lord, we are just excited about everybody being here. We pray today that you'll be with Trey and Lee as they present to us just a method and a way for us to build stronger marriages. Lord, this isn't about fixing marriages in one day. It's just about giving us the tools that we need to build our relationships and make them stronger in Christ. Lord, we're so thankful for the leadership here at Lakehoma that allows us to do this here. Lord, we're thankful for your son, Jesus, and it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
All yours, baby.
All right. Is this on? Am I good to go? All right. Glad you're here. Thank you to Robert and to the Lakehoma Church for hosting. Glad you've come spend your day. We understand time is valuable. It is the most valuable thing we have these days. And you've given your time to bless your marriage, and we're grateful for that. It's good for us to do this. We feel like marriage is kind of like a car. It just needs tuned up regularly. It's not that our marriage is bad. It's not that it always has problems, which it does have problems. But it's kind of one of those things to where it's good for us regularly to set through something or have to talk about something that reminds us what's really important. Because if we're not careful, we're really bad about letting things not as important trump things that are really important, much like marriage and relationships and things along those lines. We're going to kick things off with a little video, just to kind of wake us up. Our material is, you're going to laugh, and we want you to. It is okay to laugh. It is okay to, I know you probably need a good cup of coffee before you're ready to laugh, but we're going to try and get you rolling this morning. We have all different types. So we've got folks in here. We've been married, it's going to be nearly 30 years in how many days did you say? 8 days, 30 years for us. That's awesome. We've got some folks in here that are newlyweds, have been married less than a year, which is awesome. Do we have any engaged folks in here? Yeah, sometimes we have some of those, sometimes we don't. That's awesome. When you're a newlywed, and those of us who've been married a long time will remember this. You remember how well as newlyweds we do at overlooking the things that get on our nerves about our spouse, and we focus as newlyweds on the things we really like. Do you remember that? And sometimes as you get married, and you've been married 30 years, we tend to focus on the things that really gets under our skin and overlook the things that our spouse does well, and we kind of reverse that. And sometimes it's really good if we can go back and kind of act a little like newlyweds in a sense of trying to, I'm really going to work hard to be a good husband, a good wife, and focus on the good things. Check out this little video. This is fantastic to help us remind us the difference between being newlyweds and not so newlyweds.
Do these pants make me look fat?
What? You look like a supermodel. You look fantastic.
Newlyweds. Do these pants make me look fat?
We could get you a treadmill for Christmas if you really wanted one.
Not so newlyweds.
Hey, I heard the car pull up. Let me get one of these bags.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Newlyweds.
Honey, there's somebody at the door.
Not so newlyweds.
You look really handsome tonight.
It's only because I have to keep up with my beautiful wife.
Newlyweds. You know, you could have at least not worn a hat.
We're at a pizza joint, not a rehearsal dinner.
Not so newlyweds.
Honey, you missed your turn.
Sorry, I'll turn around.
No worries, we can be a little late. Newlyweds. I can't believe you just missed your turn again. Do you want me to drive?
Sure, if you
know what? Just get us there!
Not so newlyweds.
furries. It's kind of cute.
Newlyweds. Sorry.
Not so newlyweds.
Well, thanks, honey, for helping me with the dishes.
The quicker we get done with this, the sooner I can eat your delicious cooking.
Newlyweds. Would you mind helping me with the dishes?
Yeah, I'm just gonna finish the sports section real quick.
So what you're saying is you never want to have sex with me again because that's what it sounds like.
Not so newlyweds.
I like the way she says that with the butcher knife in her hand. Did you notice that? Yeah, that's good stuff right there. That is good stuff. All right, let me tell you, Lee's going to come up here and help me for a second. Let me tell you a little bit about us, just so you'll know. Our slide's a little bit behind in the sense of I need to do some updating. We've been married 29 years. We're about a week away from 30. We do have 4 kids. That hasn't changed, right? You hope not. Okay. We live in Childress, Texas. We love ministry. That's what we do. Marriages, Stronger Married. We're big baseball fans. We love baseball. Doesn't matter who's playing. We'll show up and watch baseball. So we enjoy that. Our family that we'll talk about a little bit, we always try to introduce them so that when we mention them later, you'll go, oh, okay, I remember them. On the far left is our oldest. That is Taylor. Taylor is at Texas Tech. He is 28. And Taylor is ex-military Ranger Special Operations. Being a single guy when he was about a year into college, said, you know, it's a good time for me to see the world. And against our better judgment at the time, signed up to be an Army Ranger and an airborne guy, and did about 30 missions at nighttime in Afghanistan and other crazy places, and loved it. But he's out. Government's paying for his schooling. He's doing well. Other than he says life's a little boring compared to what it used to be. Connor, next to him, just graduated from Lubbock Christian University. He is a digital media arts major and is currently seeking employment. Not as fast as his father would like, but he is working on that. Cooper is in the middle, and this picture is a little old because Cooper's changed a lot. He is 16. In this picture, he was about 14. Cooper is now driving. He's our last one we have at home. He is going to be a junior in high school, plays football and football and baseball, and about to get real busy with two-a-days here pretty soon. Over on the far right is Parker. He's the tallest. He's currently our favorite because he's given us a daughter-in-law, right? Finally, some other girls in the house, Mama says, that she can shop with. And so Abby is our daughter-in-law. She's a nurse. Parker is a high school English teacher. And they just got back from they don't have any kids yet, no grandkids. I'm ready for that. They're off seeing the world in Brazil and just got home. But that's our crew, just to kind of give you a little bit of idea about them. And now let me tell you a little bit about us. We've been married nearly 30 years. We married very young. Back in the 80s, the good old days, right? Back in the 80s when you could do that, we married right out of high school. And in fact, we were still pretty much just kids. And if my kids came at 18 now and said, hey, I'm thinking about getting married, I'd go, that is not going to happen. But back then you could, for some reason. We realized, we knew it, but we realized after we got married just how different we were from one another. Y'all are different from each other. I mean, if I just ask, how many of you feel like you're very different from your spouse? It's all right, raise your hand. That's legal, all right? Just no gut checks today, all right? Now, you can do this, but none of this. We realized we were very different. Now, even if you think you're similar, we have similar interests, you married someone the opposite sex, and that's still very different than you are. So you married somebody very different. We're very different in so many aspects of life. And we still, 29 years later, it just seems like whatever she likes, I just happen to like the opposite, you know, and whatever my preference is, her preference is just the opposite. And so that we've had to learn to adapt to that, and that's okay. Because honestly, I think if I married somebody just like me, I'd have driven myself nuts. I don't think I can handle that. And we tend to marry people opposite than us. Here's a few things to just give you a few ideas. I'm an on-time person. I like to be on time when I go places. We have some of those in here, right? Being on time, for those of you that are not us, okay, and not in our group, Being on time means being there at least 10 to 15 minutes early, okay? We want you to understand that. That's what on time means. If something starts at 9 and you show up at 9, you're late. You should have been there 10 minutes ago. Now, I just so happened to marry a girl who is not an on-time person. In fact,
well, let's just say, if running late were an exercise, I would look anorexic, so fit.
yeah, it'd be a great way to exercise, right? Is her microphone turned on? Let me look. Now we're good to go. Organization, I'm not very organized. I'll just go ahead and admit I'm a little on the unorganized side.
Just a little.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty organized. I think everything has its place, and I want everything in its place.
I think details are overrated. I don't need a lot of details in life. You know, if I've got something going on, just tell me what I need to know, and I'm good to go. Flew to Indiana a while back for a speaking engagement, and I was going by myself on this trip, and the night before I left, Lee and one of her friends said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Indiana." And they said, No, where are you going in Indiana? I said, I hadn't looked. I don't know where. They said, well, how do you know where to get off? I said, the plane stops, They said, do you have somebody picking you up? Yes. Who's picking you up? I don't know, but they'll be there. I'm not, well, where are you staying? I don't know. They said, well, what do you know? I said, I speak 3 times and I come home on Monday. What else do I really need to know? But I married a girl that's not like that.
I need details. I want to know who, what, when, where, why, and how.
I'm an extrovert, and I absolutely love being up here in front of you guys today. This is fun. This is good stuff.
And I'm an introvert, and I'm still trying to figure out how he's convinced me to be up here in front of you guys.
I'm a classic rock fan, and if we're listening to the radio and driving, I'm hunting a classic rock station.
And I'll listen to classic rock, but I probably will flip it over to classic country if I have control.
Yeah. I'm a morning person. Do we have a few morning people in here? Mornings are fun. Yeah, I like mornings. Sometimes I go to bed tonight thinking, I wish it'd hurry up and be morning so I could get up. I just like the mornings.
I'm a night owl. In fact, it's usually mid-morning before I decide if I'm even going to be a Christian for the day.
About 10 a.m. is kind of where she is, right? I like coffee in the mornings because coffee's enjoyable to drink.
I drink coffee in the mornings for the protection of others.
There you go. I'm a little sloppy.
And I'm a neat freak. When it comes to shopping, I shop very methodically. I like to use coupons and read labels, compare prices,
you try everything
on.
Yeah, I can get a whole new wardrobe in about 20 minutes at Target or whatever store we're at. Grab it and go. Pretty much it.
In our house, the toilet paper goes over the top of the roll.
And until I married her, I didn't know there was a right way to put toilet paper on a toilet paper roll. I was just glad it was there when I showed up, And so, as we have gone through marriage, we have found it interesting that we're just 2 very different people. What you tend to notice, and I know y'all are the same way, is that a lot of your strengths, if you're different from your spouse, a lot of your strengths are going to be your spouse's weaknesses. And a lot of your spouse's strengths are going to be your weaknesses. Does that make sense? The areas where I'm the weakest and need help on, I've got someone who balances me out really well, which I'm really glad. Can you imagine me trying to keep up with and organize and reconcile a checkbook and a bank statement being unorganized and not full of details? So give that to the girl who, keeps every little minute detail on everything in the checkbook. And so you deal with things and you learn to go, hey, what's your strength? What's your weakness? This is your area. You handle this. And so it's kind of nice to have someone in life that you can bounce and balance you out, trying to make things fix. And fit is how it works. One of the things that we messed up on big time the first few years of marriage was, I thought because she wasn't like me that she needed fixed. She needs to be more fun and she needs to be more outgoing and she needs to quit stressing over details, And she'd look at me and she would see my unorganized stuff and the things that didn't fit her, and she would go, boy, what did his mama do to him? You know, I've got to fix this boy. And we spent the first few years of marriage trying to fix each other, and that is not the way to do it. In fact, it's interesting, we've learned, it's taken us a while, both with marriage and with parenting, that we talk about in our parenting or our family workshop, is that my job isn't to fix my wife. If you came here today because you hope to fix your spouse, you can't fix your spouse. You can fix yourself. And you can hope, because you're working hard to be a really good spouse, that your spouse will notice and do the same thing and try to be inspired and also do the same thing. But you can't fix your spouse. I can't fix her and she can't fix me. We have to allow each other to be who God made us to be. And so that's not my job, is to fix her, and her job isn't to fix me. One of the books that we brought on the table back there is a book called Personality Profile for Couples. And it is a fantastic book that really helped Young in our marriage when we read it about, now I understand why he is or she is the way that she is, and kind of give us a little bit more understanding on that. So if you've got your workbook, let's kick into the first little session on myths. This is really quick. We'll zip through this one really quick, this first little session, and move to the next one, because the next one's a whole lot more fun. But just to give you some ideas. Now, the reason we do this is because there's a lot of things aren't true about marriage that you hear today. And they're myths. And so we want to talk about those for a second. But to give you an idea of what a myth is, some of you may be going, well, I'm not sure what a myth is. Well, let me throw you up some examples for a second, okay? This is Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call him. You guys in Oklahoma are much like us in Texas. We don't have a lot of trees, and so we know this guy ain't around anywhere we live. Every now and then we go out to Tennessee or North Carolina or even Arkansas. We'll throw this up there and they'll go, really? That's a myth, you know? And we're like, hey, they hadn't found him yet. Everybody's got a camera on their phone. We still can't get a picture of this guy, right? This is Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie, sometimes she is called. And because she is over in Scotland, we don't know if she's a myth or not, right? I had a buddy that I got to spend some time with a while back who grew up there. And while he was in Childress, Texas, and we were having a meal together, I asked him about Nessie. I said, hey, Nessie, myth, truth, real? I said, the way I put it is, is there people who live out there who have seen her that you know? And he said, absolutely. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, there's a lot of Scottish people that have seen Nessie. It's always after they've had a fifth of whiskey, but they've seen her then, you know. So it kind of gave me an idea of which way we're going. The unicorn, how about Paul Bunyan and Babe the Big Blue Ox? So you can kind of get an idea. Here's a couple of more myths. This is a good one for you. You've heard this one growing up. If you make an ugly face, it might do what? Stick or freeze, right? And you know that's not true. Somewhere, some mama years ago is the one that got this going. I don't know, she was going somewhere, she wanted her kids to make a good impression, and one of them was making faces and said, don't do that, it might stick. And boy, it just took off. And we believe that today. And it's a myth, although every now and then we see some kid, right, honestly, that runs up and you go, hey, maybe that's not a myth, you know. How many of you know this? How many? Don't play with matches, or can I see some hands that know this one? This one's not a popular myth, but there are people that know this one, and I grew up being told, don't play with matches or you might wet the bed. There are some folks, yeah, no kidding. I missed out on a ton of fun as a kid because I didn't get to play with matches because I was scared of this. It was a myth. I didn't realize it until I'd grown up, that is a myth, you know, and there were a few times when I was a kid, I'd wake up and I'd go, I didn't play with matches yesterday. If you cross your eyes, they might. There you go, stick. This is a great one. Don't swallow your gum because it won't what? Digest for 7 years. Who made that up? Where did that even come from? If you've had children, you know where you can find that in 3 days once it's swallowed, right? If you're changing diapers, you know where you can find that. So you know that's a myth. So here's some marriage myths. Number one, if you ignore or deny that you're having some problems, they'll just go away. That's a marriage myth. If you ignore or deny that you're having some marriage problems, it'll go away. Lee and I have learned a long time ago that if we're working through some stuff that's going on with us, just me ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It's still there. And at some point, we got to talk about it. Number two, great marriages just happen. They don't take work. And that's a huge myth. A lot of folks think that you have a good marriage. You just wake up one day, and you've been married 25 years, and you go, wow, we got a great marriage. How did that happen? That doesn't happen. The only way you can have a great marriage is to work at it. You're going to have to be intentional. You're going to have to say, I want to have a great marriage, and here's what I got to do to have it. Does that make sense? People who want to get in shape, people who want to lift weights, people who want to have a bunch of muscles, they don't go, I think tomorrow I'm going to start working out, and I'm going to get in shape, and I'm going to have a bunch of muscles, and they get out of bed the next morning, look in the mirror, and go, whoa, where did those come from? It doesn't work that way. You don't accidentally get into shape. You don't accidentally have a great marriage. It's going to take work. Now, let me throw this out there because this is a good place to do it. Great marriages aren't defined just by length. Because I've met a lot of people who've been married a long time that are miserable. Now, I like length. That is a characteristic of a healthy marriage, but not always. I like our 30 years. I'm proud of 30 years. But I've met couples that have been married for 4 years that sometimes have better marriages than couples that have been married 40 years. So it's not just about quantity, it's about quality. It's about working in your marriage. I love the old story of the Sunday morning when the church house was full and the preacher was up preaching, and it was a pretty sunny Sunday, and Satan decided, I think I'm going to pay those folks a visit. And so he comes strolling in the door thinking, I'm going to see if I still got it. And he goes, "Wah!" and everybody runs. I mean, the place clears out. He's proud of himself. He said, man, I still got it, And except down on about row 2, there's a little old guy, never moved. So he's really confused at why that guy didn't run like everybody else did. So he goes down, the little old guy walks right up to his face, gets right up in his face and goes, do you know who I am? And the old guy said, yeah, I know who you are. He said, are you not afraid of me? And he goes, no, I'm not afraid of you. And Satan asked him, said, can I ask you why you're not afraid of me? And the little old guy said, yeah, I'll tell you. I've been married to your sister for 52 years. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want a marriage like that. Nobody does. Nobody wants to be married to Satan's sister or Satan's brother. So, healthy, good, strong marriages aren't always about length. It's about what you're doing right now to make a strong marriage. Number 3, my marriage will always be perfect. And that is a myth. You didn't marry someone perfect. Careful, don't say amen real quick, all right? Don't elbow them. You didn't marry somebody perfect. They didn't either. There are no perfect people, so there will never be a perfect marriage. There will always be times in your marriage where you're going to have to work through some things, where you're going to have to maybe sometimes ask for outside help. But the worst thing you can do is come along and go, hey, we are struggling with something, and we'll just, we don't have a clue how to deal with it, and we won't tell anybody, or we won't get any help. Best thing you can do is ask for help. We'll talk about that later. But your marriage won't always be perfect. There are going to be valleys and peaks. Best thing you can do, the more you work on your marriage, you'll have a whole lot more peaks than valleys. The grass is always greener on the other side, and that's a great myth. Because I hear this in 2 different ways. We do. Sometimes we have people come to us and they go, why can't my marriage be more like the Smiths over here? We just wish we had a marriage as good as the Smiths. Their grass looks so much greener than ours. If you're looking at somebody else's marriage going, I want a marriage like theirs, there's nothing wrong with that. But you're going to have to spend some time watering your own grass. Does that make sense? Instead of focusing on everybody else. Instead of focusing on what you don't have, work on that. And so the grass isn't always greener on the other side. The other thing we hear is sometimes kind of like cell phones. About every 2 years, every 3 years, every 4 years, we're like, I think I want to upgrade my cell phone. Because there's something better out there. And in the cell phone world, there usually is. But in the marriage world, Usually an upgrade isn't an upgrade. We look out there and we go, hey, the grass is greener. You know, I can find somebody better, somebody nicer, somebody that will, you know, whatever it is. It's not always an upgrade. And so understand the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. Huge myth, because this is something you've heard forever. Now, we're not saying that if you leave for work that morning and you don't see your spouse all day and you come in that night for supper and you see your spouse, you hadn't gone, boy, I really missed you today. What we're talking about is long absences is not healthy for your marriage. And we just want you to understand that. Are there people sometimes that have occupations that take them away from their spouse for long periods of time? Yeah, there are. But if you can keep from it, is what I'm trying to say. Absence does not make the heart grow fonder. Separation and absence from your spouse for long periods of time is hard on your marriage. It really is. Whether it's a deployment, whether it's a friend of ours, it's a pilot, he will tell you, I love my 2 weeks, 10 days that I may get to be home, but he said, it's really hard on me and my marriage and my family to be gone for 2 weeks away from them and only communicate by text message. So absence doesn't always make the heart grow fonder. I had a guy sit in my office one time and he said, hey, I got a job offer down Odessa, Midland area, and I'm leaving, moving. I said, oh, I hate to lose your family, but congratulations, I'm happy for you. He said, hey, we're pretty much doubling our salary. We're going to pay off a lot of bills and things are going to get a whole lot better. And I said, we're going to miss your family. And he goes, oh no, my family's not going, I'm going to go by myself. And I said, now, is this temporary, or, I mean, are you just going to be gone for a while and home? Because I said, it's not good to be away from your family. And he said, well, I'm going to be gone for about a month. I'm home for a week, gone for about a month, home for a week. And I said, man, you are going to be gone a ton. He said 2 things. 1, I have a strong marriage. And 2, I'm doubling my salary. And I reminded him, I said, hey, doubling your salary is not always the best thing if it's hard on your marriage and family. A year later, he sat back in my office as his marriage was crumbling around him and he was trying to stop it. And his words were, that was the worst mistake I ever made. I'm just telling you, just don't believe the myth that absence makes a heart grow fonder, because absences are hard on marriage. Number 6, I killed it. Can you click for me? Got it. All right, I can relax now. I can relax now. Number 6. And this is a huge myth too, because this, and it's really hard. Our newlyweds are doing great at going, hey, I want to help unload groceries from the spouse's car, and I want to open the door, and I want to help with the dishes, and I want to do this. And as we've been married for a while, you know what happens? We kind of get a little lazy, and we think, well, I've been married 30 years. Why do I got to work as hard as I used to? And I can relax now. And laziness has killed more marriage than affairs ever have. Neglect has killed more marriages, to where you kind of push your marriage to the back burner and you start letting the other things that aren't as important get in the way, and you think, I can relax. We get comfortable in marriage, and there's not anything wrong with comfortable. I love my marriage. I'm comfortable in my marriage. But comfortable is really for slippers and maybe a recliner, not for marriage. I have to work as hard every day to keep my wife as I did to win her in the first place. So don't believe the old thing, and we'll talk. This is our theme for the day. Don't believe the idea that, hey, once you're married, she wears my ring, you know, he wears his wedding ring, and so we don't have to work as hard as we used to. Number 7, in marriage, all my needs we met all the time in marriage, and that just want you to understand that not everything you ever want at your beck and call comes when you want it. Number 8, my spouse will know all of my needs without me saying anything. This is a good one. Now, we'll at times kind of take a break and talk to the husbands and talk to the wives. We'll kind of start with the wives for a second this morning, all right, ladies? Because this is your natural character that God created in you. You're very intuitive. You connect dots so well. You can pick up on hints. Your husband will just say something, you'll go, hey, he likes that. I'm buying that for Christmas for him. Or you got that. You're so good at that. But let me tell you something. God didn't create your husband to be anything like that. I mean, nothing. And you can drop hints all day long. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, God didn't create. Now, if you got a guy, if you married a man who somehow or another knows everything that you want and is really good at this right here, you hang on to him because you got a 1 in a million guy. Because 99% of us struggle with knowing what our spouse needs with just by hints. We don't know. Our telepathic stuff in men don't work like you ladies do, okay? And when you're throwing dots out there and you think my husband's going to connect those dots and he's going to know what it is that I want and what it is that I need, you can't get those dots close enough for us guys to figure out what it is unless you tell us. You specifically have to say, here's what I need. And ladies, I hate to say this, but I'm going to. You're probably going to have to say it 2 or 3 times. And you're going to go, but I should only have to say it once. And you are right. But you're going to have to say it 2 or 3 times because that's just how we are. So, work on if you need something from us, just tell us. All right? Work on, if you're going to drop a hint, you drop a good hint. You stand there dropping that hint of, I like this shirt, size 6, birthday's next week, and until you see the bulb go off over his head, don't you stop dropping those hints, all right? Because you can stand there all day long going, do I look cute on this? Do you like this on me? And he's going, yeah. In his head, he's going, can we just go to the car? He's not catching any of that. So you make sure he understands before you move on. Number 9, you shouldn't be your spouse's best friend, and I'm telling you what, you should be your spouse's best friend because the divorce rate drops to 20% in marriages where you feel like you have married your best friend. You should be in one of those relationships to where the first thing you think of when something good happens, I can't wait to tell my spouse because they're my best friend. A happy marriage will not have any problems. And we just want you to understand, just because you have issues in your marriage doesn't mean you can't be happy. And doesn't mean your marriage isn't good. It just may mean you're working through things. Not a myth, you can have a great marriage. It is not a myth, you can have a great marriage. And here's how you do it. 1, do it God's way. Next session here in just a second, we're going to talk about some very simple, specific things that God says, hey, if you'll just do this, husbands, everything's going to work great. Wives, if you'll just do this, things will run a lot smoother. God knew what He's doing. He created marriage. He ought to know. He's the one with the owner's manual. Does that make sense? And sometimes we come along and go, well, I know what it says over here, but I want to try and do it my way. I mean, can you imagine going to Home Depot and buying a chainsaw and going, man, I hate it when they put instructions and directions and warnings in here with the chainsaw. I can do it my own way. Well, they know you're going to cut off your arm if you don't get some instructions somewhere. God knows what He's doing. Maintain your marriage. Just like you maintain your car, like you maintain your house, you maintain your kids. Take them to the doctor when they're not feeling well. You get them shots, whatever it is. You buy them back to school clothes because if you got teenagers, their pants are now this much shorter. Or I was going to say they have holes in the knees, but that's really cool these days. You maintain your marriage. You do that by maintaining a relationship with God. Lee and I, we'll talk about it later today, but we feel like one of the best things that we do for our marriage is we include God in it. And that's more than just saying we like God. We like we pray together. We go to church together. We read books together. We read our Bible together oftentimes. And we think that we've learned that when our marriage is clicking the best, it seems like it's when we're both focused on God the way that we're supposed to be. Got to keep your priorities straight. If you're not careful, what happens is, in life, we let things like bills, jobs, kids' activities, you just go down the list, hobbies, all take priority over marriage. And that shouldn't happen. And then we have to understand our spouse's needs. I need to know what that girl needs. Because if I don't know what she needs, I can't give it to her. And the interesting thing is if I don't know what she needs, guess what I try to give to her? What it is that I need, because that's all I understand. And if she doesn't know what I need, all she knows is, well, I know what I need, and I'm going to try and give that to him. Well, what I need is not what she needs. So I need to understand what my spouse needs. You'll do some homework during break time on that, all right? Now, real quick, super quick, and then we're going to stand up, stretch for a second, and then kick right into the next session for just a moment. I like running. I run because I like donuts, and donuts, donuts are good, aren't they? And I can, easily in the summertime when it's hot and I'm not running, I can put on 5-10 pounds, and then starting back in the fall, I have to work that back off. And my friend Randy and I run, and we take the summers off, and every summer I always know I'm going to need to get off 5 pounds or 10 pounds. It just depends on how well or how not well I've eaten during the summertime. A couple of summers ago, August ran around, September, we said, hey, Monday we got to start running. I said, great. He says, have you got on the scales yet? And I said, no, I haven't. I don't know if it's 5 pounds or 10 pounds that I put on this summer. He said, I think I put on at least 10. And I said, I probably have to. Got on the scale Saturday before we start running on Monday. And that little circle, like one of them old dial scales, man, it takes off and it goes up. It goes past the 5 pounds, past the 10 pounds. 25 pounds, it says, that I put on during the summertime. And I remember thinking, one of my joker kids is playing with my scales and trying to trick me. So I get off, and sure enough, goes back to zero, get back on. I put on 25 pounds over the summer. And I'm mad. I get really frustrated because that's going to take a lot of work to get off. I knew my clothes had been fitting tight. I knew I hadn't been eating well. In fact, I'd really been eating poorly. 25 pounds. So I send Randy a message on my phone, text him real quick, and goes, dude, I put on 25 pounds. You know, of course, he sends a message back and goes, you are huge. I look over on the bathroom counter, and there's 2 pieces of candy I picked up from a kid's vacation Bible school at our church or something like that. And I had them in my pocket. I'd been giving them out to kids, I think, that had did their memory verse. I don't remember what it was, but I had 2 left, and I was probably going to eat them. But I looked over there, and I kind of got a little inspiration because I remember thinking, now or later, now and later. And I remember thinking as I was standing there on that scale, and actually, you know what you do when you're frustrated? You blame everybody. I'd already been blaming my wife. I was standing there thinking, if she wasn't a good cook and didn't buy Twinkies and things like that. And I blamed my parents, if they'd have just been skinny people, And I looked over there at the little candy and I thought, I could start now. Because we were supposed to start Monday running. But if I start now, I'll get to my later quicker when I get this 25 pounds off. And so I reached over and I grabbed one of those things and I unwrapped it and I threw the candy in the trash and I took the little wrapper and I stuck it in my wallet. And it was kind of my inspiration. It was kind of like here today on September the 7th, this is my now, I'm starting. And I actually went and I sent Randy a message, said I'm heading out I'm going to go run this morning because I can't wait to start till Monday. I need to start right now. And I remember, because I kept thinking, the sooner I start, and the harder I work, the quicker I'll get to getting that 25 pounds off, which I really want to do. I remember a couple of months later, I'd worked hard. We'd gone out on a long run, came in, got on the scale. Sure enough, I was back to 200 pounds where I wanted to be, kind of where I try to stay in there. And I remember thinking, got to my later. It's exactly what I wanted to do. Your now or later when it comes to marriage is that I'm hoping that today, August, is it 4th? Sure enough, August 4th. I'm hoping that today, August 4th, you'll make this your now when it comes to your marriage. That you'll quit blaming and going, well, if my husband and if my wife and if my parents or whatever it was, and you'll just say, hey, I'm going to start today on August the 4th, and I'm going to be the best husband or wife that I can be. Because I know that if I go to work, I can't make him, I can't make her, but if I go to work, then somewhere down the line, we'll have a better later in our marriage. May take 2 weeks, may take 2 months, but we'll look back and we'll go, man, I am really glad on August 4th, back in Mustang, Oklahoma, that we kicked into a now. That's a healthy thing. We got an email the other day from a lady in Abilene. She sent us a message going, she said, hey, you were in Abilene back in April, and my husband and I both committed to starting a now. that Saturday that you were in Abilene. And here we are 2 months later, and we want you to know we are enjoying our later. We have never had a better marriage than what we have right now, and it's all because we started and were intentional back in April when you were here in Abilene. And I remember thinking, she got it. She understands. It takes work. So whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is, I'm hoping today will be a good now for you. All right, here's what we're going to do for just a second. You've been sitting for a little while. It is 9:47. At 9:55, that's not very long. You got a second to stretch your legs, go to the bathroom, check out the books, get a cup of coffee, that's legal, all of that stuff. But at 9:55, we got to start back in here. If you're not going to get up and move around, there's a little quiz page in your handout. You can sit there and do that real quick. We're going to go over that when we get back just for fun, all right? Take a break. We can? Yeah. Let's skip that quiz for a sec. Yeah, we'll scoot down one.
Do you need your Bible down there?
No, I got scriptures on there. All right, when we were talking about needs a while ago, come on, you're good. Dr. Willard Harley, one of our favorite authors. Lee and I like to read, well, actually, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big reader. She likes to read, but I read. But we read books together, which has been really good for our marriage. Meaning, we'll pick out a marriage book about once a year, sometimes twice a year, and we'll read it together. We don't read out loud to each other. I'll read a chapter, she reads a chapter. Sometime if I'm busy, she may read 2 chapters. She underlines something she finds interesting, and then I'm going through and I'll look and I'll go, why'd she underline that? We'll talk about it. So reading a book together on marriage is a very healthy thing to do. One of our favorite books is a book called His Needs, Her Needs by Dr. Willard Harley. We like that book. It's been great for us. We probably have read that book half a dozen times. We've used it in Bible studies with people in our homes and counseling, premarital counseling. But he has done a lot of work on what men and women need. And in all of his studies of thousands and thousands of people, he says there are 10 basic needs in marriage. And here they are. Sexual fulfillment, affection, financial support, domestic support, recreational companionship, conversation, openness and honesty, family commitment, attractiveness of spouse, and admiration. Those are the 10 basic needs that everybody needs. Now, he says generally, women have kind of 5 that they generally steer towards, and men have the opposite 5. That it's not uncommon. That's because we're different from one another. If my 5 was exactly like Lee's 5, man, you just have the perfect marriage, right? But it's not. Generally, the things that Lee needs aren't even on my list. And the things that I need aren't on her list. And so, but I need to know what Lee's needs are, and she needs to know what my needs are. So generally, Dr. Willard Harley says, now this is generally, this does not mean this is your spouse, so don't read this and go, well, that means my husband needs this, because you got to ask your husband. Generally, when it comes to needs in marriage, men need sexual fulfillment more than women do. Men, that's usually higher. In fact, Dr. Willard Harley says that's generally the number 1 need for men is sexual fulfillment. Number 2 up here, affection is generally women's number 1 need. Most wives say my number 1 need is affection. Now, if you're a husband, you're going, that's what my wife needs. She might not. She might need conversation more than she needs affection. So in a minute, when you do some homework during a break time and you ask your spouse, you need to find out what it is she may not. Affection, last time Lee and I did this, which is a couple of months ago, wasn't even on her list. And so affection is not something that's huge on my wife's list. Financial support, generally a woman's need, meaning husbands, if this is on your wife's list, she wants to make sure that the family is taken care of, that there's enough money at the end of the month to pay all the bills. Domestic support, generally that's a man need, but that's not always the case. Domestic support sometimes can be a little bit more traditional, meaning we had some friends and he had a big need for domestic support. He worked all day while his wife stayed home with her kiddo. Now, I don't want to get into all their details and everything else, but when he would get home, he would walk in the door and the house would be a total wreck. And she had been watching TV or movies, they'd been watching cartoons during the day, and he'd go, what do you have planned for supper? And she'd say, well, I was waiting for you to get home for us to figure out what we wanted to do. Well, he would get so frustrated because it was like, I've been working all day, and the last thing I want to do is come home and have to worry about supper, and, picking up the house or whatever it was. That was one of his big needs. And so they had to struggle through a lot of things until she realized, hey, I need to do a better job planning out whatever today's activity, because this is something he needs, and that's domestic support. Recreational companionship, generally a man's need, meaning your husband wants you to be involved or at least take interest in hobbies that he has. Whether it's riding motorcycles or fishing or deer hunting or whatever it is, he wants you to either be able to talk about those things, let him talk about them, or maybe go sit in a deer blind with him sometime, something along those lines. That's important to him. Conversation, generally a woman's need, right? That one is pretty much a gimme. Openness and honesty. Generally a woman need, meaning, Lee's going to talk about this in a little while, it's important, husbands, that you are open and honest with your wife in every area. Family commitment, it's a woman's need most of the time, meaning, husbands, she wants you to be just as committed, no, she wants you to be more committed to your family than you are to your job, to your hobbies, to whatever else it is. Attractiveness of spouse is a man need. Between men and women, who are the most visual? That would be the men. Men are very visual. We'll talk about this later. And so this is important to many men. We'll talk about that. Admiration or praise. Dr. Willard Harley says if sexual fulfillment isn't at the top of your spouse's list, it may very well be this one right here, your husband's list, which is giving your husband praise. We'll talk about that a whole lot in a minute. So in a minute, when we have a break, we have a paper in there we want y'all to do together where you wives go in and you circle or you write 1 through 5 and husbands write 1 through 5 so you can know what your spouse needs. Interesting thing is you may have done this recently, I don't know. Lee and I try to do it once every couple of months together, even though we may do workshops all the time, because our needs change. And I need to know when she's going, I need more communication. So it's healthy to do that. Average wedding today costs about $25,000. Probably doesn't surprise y'all at all. Actually, probably the figures are higher now. $25,000. Which is pretty pricey, right? Now some of you are going, whoa, I didn't spend $25,000 on my wedding. Well, that just means somebody else covered your other part, right? The interesting thing is, there's nothing wrong with weddings, but the interesting thing is tell me how much time newlyweds spend on this right here. Yeah, at least a year. So, everything's planned out. Our son and daughter-in-law, we would remind them over and over. They would know who's wearing what, who's walking where, who's singing this, and who's doing that. And they had everything down. Well, we worked through songs, and we worked through colors, and we worked through this, and we worked through that. And yet, so many couples go into their marriage knowing everything about this and nothing about how do I get to that. And that's what matters. 50 years of marriage is what everyone remembers. We think, hey, everybody's going to remember this wedding and it's going to be so pretty. How many of you that's been married for more than 20 years remembers everything at your wedding? We've been married 29 years, and if it wasn't for a VHS cassette, some of you in here that are under 24, you might want to Google that, okay? If it wasn't for a VHS cassette tape that someone took of our wedding, I wouldn't have a clue what happened. Let me tell you something. People won't remember this, but they will remember that. That's your goal. The wedding is just kind of it's like, can you imagine having a beautiful present with a beautiful gift inside of it and getting all excited about the paper? I don't care about the gift. I just want to look at the paper. The wedding is the paper on the gift. The marriage is what matters. That's what we want. So how do we get there? Husbands, let's talk to you. If you've got your little workbook, let's look at that workbook for a second. Let's look at that workbook for a second. I want to share a verse with you. In Ephesians chapter 5, a man by the name of Paul wrote this. Check this out, all right? He talks to husbands, and he says, he's telling you about how God wants you to do marriage. And he says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Now, this is just huge. Think about this for a second. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So tell me real quick, that word gave there, in the English language, what kind of word is that? Say it again. It's an action word. It is a word meaning act. Love took place by Christ giving. Does that make sense? Now, God's love has always been an action love. Think about John 3:16. Y'all know that verse, right? For God so loved the world that He There's that word. Love is an action. So here's what I want you to catch, husbands. When God says, I want you to love your wives, He says, loving your wives is something you do. It's an action, not something you say. Notice, now, your wife loves to hear you say, I love you. But notice, He doesn't right here. In fact, He didn't really say it anywhere. Husbands, tell your wives you love them. Doesn't say it. Husbands, you show your wives that you love them. Now, action love. We tend to think love is a noun. It's a feeling. And you can have some feelings because of love. But love isn't a feeling. Love is an action. Lee can scoot over next to me in a seat somewhere really close and put her arm up under my arm, and I get all tingly. Yeah, 29 years, them tingles are still there, you know. But you know what? That's not love. I like those tingles. I like them butter. That's not love, though. We've raised 4 boys. We've told our boys many times. Sometime, boys, some girl's going to scoot over really close to you, and you're going to get tingly all over. And you're going to think, I love this girl. I think I feel love. And we've told them, that's not love. What you're probably feeling is common sense leaving your body. But it ain't love, because love is an action. So as we talk about love for a second, I want you to notice, as we give you 10 things, husbands, all of these are action things. And I want you to think back for a second, and then I'm going to turn it over to Lee. I want you to think back for a second to when you were trying to win your wives. Y'all remember that? Let's go back pre-marriage. You hadn't even asked your wife to marry you yet. You were doing all kinds of crazy stuff to get her to notice you. Do you remember what those things were? They were all action things. You did things like you sent her flowers, you called her for no reason, you opened doors for her, you did things to try to impress her. I mean, you just go down the list. You dated her regularly. You told her she was beautiful. All of these things that you did pre-marriage were all... She fell in love with a guy who showed her love through action. And the worst thing you can do is get married and quit doing the very thing she fell in love with. Because God created us to continue to show our wives love. So, Lee, come help me for a second, and I'm going to let you take over for a minute. But when we talk about don't stop pursuing your wife, you pursued her to win her. You also need to pursue her every day to keep her. Does that make sense? Every day you get up going, what can I do to show my wife that I love her today? What can I do to show my wife I love her today? Work as hard to keep her as you did to win her in the first place.
Okay, so guys, I'm going to give you a good list of things you can do to show your wife that you love her, to pursue your wife. Trey mentioned several of them, but since you need to hear things 2 or 3 times, I'm going to repeat them. Fill her car up with gas. If you don't ever do that, try it. I promise she will love it if you fill her car up with gas. Trey keeps mine full for me, and man, that's at the top of my list. Open doors for her. Carry things for her, leave sweet notes around the house where she'll find them, call her during the day just to check on her, or send her a text message and say, I'm thinking about you. If she sends you to the store for a gallon of milk, maybe you drop her favorite candy bar in the sack that she'll find, you know. But you have to know what her favorite candy bar is. So if you don't know what her favorite candy bar is, homework assignment, right? And maybe it's not candy, maybe she doesn't like candy, but you know what her favorite snack is, and you grab that off the shelf and you stick that in the bag. Tell her she's pretty, send her flowers every once in a while, or just a sweet little surprise. Now, you may have to learn this, we had to learn this. I'm very frugal, and I do not want him to spend $40 or $50 on the big bouquet of flowers that's gonna die in a week. So a single rose is great for me. And even better when he made friends with our neighbor lady who has beautiful rose bushes, and she would say, oh, you can come pick flowers for your wife anytime. So that's great. That's free flowers. It's just the thought that counts for me. So
your wife may love flowers.
She may love the big bouquet, and she may not care that you spent $50 on it. So you got to, that's another thing. You got to know your wife. What am I missing? Cook dinner every once in a while. Maybe you're the cook in the house all the time, because I know lots of men that are the cook. But if you're not the cook, cook dinner every once in a while. If you just think, oh man, she doesn't want me to cook dinner, then take her out to dinner. Help do the dishes. If that's not normally something you do, help her do the dishes. She'll just think that's the greatest. Lots of little ways that you can show your wife that you are still pursuing her every day.
Very healthy thing to do. Number 2, make or commit to a date night, making it a weekly activity. Commit to making date night a weekly activity. Now you go, why are you putting that on the husband's list? Shouldn't this be a job for the wives? Well, because your wife probably would go anytime she just needs you to step up and go, what about Thursday? So husbands, your job is to come along and go, what's a good night this week? Or maybe you can't get free during the night and you have to go during lunchtime while the kids are at school. Pick her up from work, take her out, and go have a date. But you need to have a date every week if possible. Now, Lee will talk about that more in a second on double dates and some things like this. But dating is fuel for your marriage. You fell in love because you were dating. And you're going to continue to be in love by spending time together and continue dating. Whether it's going to eat out, going to see a movie, going for a walk in the park, whatever it is. Give us some more ideas about dating.
So we hear all the time from couples, we can't afford to go on dates. And I'm going to tell you right now that you can throw that excuse out the window because dates don't have to be expensive. We honestly, we couldn't afford to pay babysitter when we're a young married couple. That babysitters are expensive and we couldn't do it. So we found another couple, that had kids about the same age as ours, and we would swap babysitting. We'd keep their kids Friday night, they'd keep our kids Saturday night. It helped us both out. We had free babysitting. And then we'd have to get creative with our dates. We might just, go somewhere that had a dollar menu and spread a blanket at the park and have a picnic, and then we'd go for a walk. Maybe we saved some bread off of our burger and we'd feed the ducks. Cheap date. Sometimes the dress up and go to a concert date, that's fun, but that's not something realistic that you can do all the time, especially if you're going to do this on a weekly basis. So, you don't have to spend a lot of money on your dates. The point is just to do something fun together where you're communicating. Double dates don't count. Trey mentioned that because what happens when you go on a double date? Usually the guys spend most of their time talking, the girls spend most of their time talking. Yes, you interact as a couple, but it's not the same as just the two of you alone together. If you're empty nesters, you may be thinking, well, our whole life is a date. We date all the time because we're almost there. But I'm going to tell you, do something that's out of the ordinary every once in a while. Maybe get out your favorite card game and play a game. Look at your old wedding video together. Get out pictures of when you were newlyweds. Do something different every once in a while and get out of that rut that you might be into.
Yeah, good point. Dating is something that just needs to happen. We had a couple the other day that attended one of our seminars, and we were asking about dating, and they had said that it'd been about 3 weeks and realized they're just schedule-wise wasn't going to happen for another couple of weeks. But he said, I looked at the schedule and realized that the kids were in school, and Thursday, if I played the cards right, I could leave work a little early and pick my wife up at work. And so I sent my wife a text. He said, I sent her a text and I said, would you be willing to go on a date with me? He said, I just made it all special. He said, I have an hour on Thursday. I will pick you up for lunch and we will have a date together. She said, I would love to. So he picks her up, goes into the office, gets her, opens the car door for her. He says, I've got 45 minutes. He said, the only thing in the area is a McDonald's. And he said, I knew it was, but it was better than not having a date. He said, I opened the door for her going to McDonald's. I asked her what she wanted. I ordered food for her. I brought it to the table. We sat on the same side of the table. He said, we talked about us, not about the kids. We had a great 35 minutes together before I had to take her back to work, open the door for her, kissed her goodbye, and she told him, I want you to know this is one of the best dates I've ever had. And I thought, that guy's got it figured out. Sometimes it's not always about being fancy. It's about saying, I will make time to spend time with my wife. Number 3, be romantic. Be romantic occasionally. If you were romantic pre-marriage, you'd be romantic post-marriage. If you sent flowers and wrote cards and called for no reason, you can do that. If you told your wife she was beautiful, you continue to tell her she is beautiful. You be romantic. Figure out what it is that your wife thinks is romantic, because everybody's different. I find that interesting because a few years ago I asked Lee, what are some things I do that are romantic? Because I thought, I need to know what I'm doing, what I can keep doing those things. And the interesting thing was, as a man, we all think, as men, we tie romance and sex together. It's just kind of like romance leads to sex. And so I asked my wife, I said, hey, what are some things that I do that you think are romantic? She named off stuff that had nothing to do with sex. And I said, that don't have anything to do with sex. And she goes, romance for me isn't always stuff that leads to sex, although it does. She said it always doesn't have to be physical. She said, you filling up, me getting in my car knowing that it was empty yesterday and I go somewhere and look and the tank's on full, she said, that is romantic. And I said, really? And I thought, I can do that, So ask your wife what she thinks is romantic and do those things. It may be grabbing a vacuum cleaner and occasionally saying, hey, I'll vacuum this rug. It may be saying, hey, I'll do the dishes tonight after supper. I'll load the dishwasher or I'll fold the laundry. But you find out from your spouse what she thinks is romantic, because what she thinks is romantic may be totally different than what you think is romantic. When we had our 20th anniversary, we'd planned a little trip, but I remember thinking I want to do something special to show my wife that I love her. And I remember kind of doing a little bit, I spent a little time Googling, ways to show your wife you love her. It's amazing what's out there, right? It was like, whoa. But one of the things that I picked up on that somebody had written that they do for their wife, I thought, ooh, I like that. I'm going to do that. I've never done that. I've always considered myself someone who is romantic, does things for my wife that she likes. But he suggested back, 30, 40 years ago, it was not uncommon for every man to open the car door for his wife when they went places. And I thought, hey, I like that. I already open doors when we go to restaurants or whatever it is. I open the door for my wife all the time, but I had never opened the car door for my wife. And so I went in and I told her, I said, I want you to know I love you. I'm going to start doing something new. She said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to start opening the car door. When we go out, I told her, I said, I need your help. She said, what do you need me to do? And I said, well, I'm going to forget a lot because I hadn't done this for 20 years. And so when I forget, just remind me. Just tell me, say, hey, you forgot to get my door. I need you to do that so I can be really good at getting your car door. She said, I can do that. Boy, I did so well. There were times I'd do so well and I'd catch her car door everywhere we'd go. And that made me feel good. And she liked it, who doesn't want their car door open? And, and then there was a few times where I'd get in the car and I'd sit down and put on my seatbelt and I'd look over and she'd still be standing up outside. And I'd go, oh no, and I'd take off my seatbelt and run around, open the door for her. Now, 80% of the time I'll catch her car door for you. Now, here's the interesting thing that I like. I think this is pretty awesome. I've been doing this for 10 years nearly now. During that time, my two youngest boys have been in the home watching their dad open the car door for their mama. Did you know that now when we go out as a family, I can't ever even seem to get her door because one of those two boys have beat me to it. I never have to open the door for Lee. Now, I do open the door for her a lot of times if I can beat one of those two boys to it. But when we're out as a family, they are catching the door for their mama because they've seen their dad do it so many times. They just know when we go places, somebody's supposed to get the door. I love that I've taught my boys, hey, when you find somebody you love someday, you treat them in such a way that you open the door for them. You do things along those lines. Husbands, think about this for a second. If you got small kids in your home, if you're here and you got grandkids, maybe you've raised all your kids, you're teaching your children and your grandchildren about marriage every day. They're in the school of marriage. It's marriage 101 at your house. And you're teaching them how to do marriage someday by the way you treat your wife. If you got little boys, they're learning how to treat their future wives. If you got girls, they're learning what to expect. I expect a boy to open a door for me that likes me because that's what my dad did for my mom. So understand, you teach them well because they need to understand that. Number 4, always talk about your spouse in a positive light. Did you want to add anything to that? No? Okay. Always talk about your wife in a positive light. Let me throw 2 or 3 things out here for a second, and I really think this is important. Men, Lee and I are doing we love going through Proverbs, the Song of Solomon. We're getting ready to do it. We hadn't told anybody. We'll just tell you. We're getting ready to start sometime or another workshop over the Song of Solomon for marriage. It is such an awesome book. If you don't know anything about it, we'll talk about this book later in the day, but it's a whole book about God's book about romance, dating, sex, marriage. I mean, he wrote the book on it. And in that book, the husband treats his wife with such tenderness. It is absolutely amazing. Doesn't raise his voice, doesn't call her, he calls her things like sweetheart and darling. Not, hey dummy, or hey you, or he uses terms of endearment. He talks about her in a positive light. To her, she's the queen. And that's really the way he's teaching us today. Husbands, your wife's the queen. And you should treat her as such. You don't talk bad about the queen. You don't tell jokes about the queen to your buddies. You don't talk bad behind her back when she's not around. She's not the butt of your joke. She's the queen. And not only do you talk about her well, you don't let anybody else not talk about her well. Because the king protects the queen. Does that make sense? Make sure you are treating your wife in such a way. There's a verse in 1 Peter 3. I love it. 1 Peter 3. I don't have it up there. I'll just tell you real quick. Peter says, handle your wife or treat your wife with gentleness. That she is a weaker vessel. Now that doesn't mean, he's not talking about, he's talking about you treat her like she is china. She's something that's going to break real easy. Emotionally, physically, you treat her so tenderly. And then he goes on to say, and if you don't, God's not going to listen to your prayers. I find that interesting. Think about that for a second. When we got married, we started talking about marriage when she was 17. It wasn't the first time. We dated for 4 years. And at 17, we were like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get married next summer. You get out of high school. This is a great time to do it. And I said, yeah, that's a perfect plan. Everything's good to go. I can't see anything going wrong with this plan. And she leaned over and she said, are you going to ask my dad? And I thought, well, we're not getting married. I'm not asking him, he's a big scary guy. Well, that was fun to that point, because I was kind of scared of my father-in-law, And sometimes, you think about it. Let me just tell you something. If you married a daughter of the king, if you married a girl who considers herself a Christian, you have a heavenly father-in-law that expects you to treat her in such a way that she's a princess. And I honestly believe, and I'm telling you this because I don't ever want you to get up in front of God and God go, why didn't you treat my daughter right? Because we'll have to answer to God about how we treat His daughter. Because He says, handle her gently as a weaker vessel. Be tender with her. And when Solomon talks and he's so tender with his wife in the Song of Solomon, he's very tender. You don't let somebody raise their voice. I got 4 boys. One of the things I'm most proud of with my boys is they have seen me treat my wife like the queen. And guess what they treat her like? She is also the queen. And so I've raised boys going, if you mouth off to the queen, you're going to answer to the king. And as they've got older, I thought, I can get a stick if I need to. You may think you're big, but hey, I brought you into this world and I can take you out of this world. I'll make another one just like you if I need to, You won't talk back to the queen. And I've raised boys that love their mama, and that makes me proud. In fact, so much so, get this, so much so that I got a little sharp with mama a while back, and the oldest jumped on his daddy and said, hey, get off her back and take it a little easy. See, I like that. I want my boys to also take care of the queen. So always treat your wife in such a way. The people look around and go, boy, he loves his wife. Boy, he treats her so good. We knew a couple one time, it really bothered us, knew a couple one time that everywhere they went, his wife was the butt of his joke, or he would cut her down and laugh like it was a joke, talk about cooking, well, my wife, whatever it was. And I remember thinking, man, if he does this all the time, his marriage has got to be horrible. Because you just can't be cutting your wife down as a joke all the time and expect to have a good marriage. And I remember at one point, I even kind of caught him off the side, and I said, hey, man, you can't be mouthing off to your wife all the time. I said, you got to be saying good things about her, not bad things about her. And I was really trying to help. What I wanted to do was punch him in the throat, but, I can't do that all the time. He said, I'm the best thing she's got going. I don't remember what it was. About a year and a half later, he comes walking to my office, sits down. Guess what's happened? She's left. I'd told him a year before, I said, hey, there's going to come a point where she's either going to up and leave because she can do better, or she's just going to get tired of it. But I can guarantee you one thing, she'll never be the wife you want her to be if you're always treating her like this. I'm the best thing she's got going. A year and a half later, sits in my office. She's left. What I need to get her back? Well, first, I told him in a very nice way, I told you this was going to happen. Told you this was going to happen. You can't be mean emotionally to your spouse and expect her to be what you want her to be. Number 5, learn the art of non-sexual touching. That's affection. Part of affection is touching, and it has nothing to do with sex. And if you're a man, if you're like me, you're going, well, I thought if we were touching, man, we were going somewhere, right? Because, non-sexual touching is kind of an oxymoron. If we're cuddled up on a couch, your wife needs you to touch her. If affection is at the top of her list or on her list, she needs touched, and it needs to have nothing to do with sex. Meaning, she needs at times for you to rub her back, or rub her feet, or to give her a hug. Men ought to come in. Men come in from work sometimes, and we'll just picture it like the wife's already home. She beat him home from work. Men come in from work, hey, hon, I'm home, and they go right to the dog, and they roll with the dog in the floor. Oh, buddy, it's so good to see you, and the wife's over here going, man, who am I, When you come home, you ought to walk in and give your wife a kiss and give her a 7-second hug every day. Yeah, the men are in here are going, 7 seconds, that's forever, 7 seconds, you can do that. Now, and don't look at your watch behind her head going, 7, break. She needs a hug every day. That's important. Good hugs. She needs touched every day. They say that a wife who has affection toward the top of her list needs 10 non-sexual touches every day. Grab your arm, give you a hug, hold your hand. You need to be able to touch your wife every day. 10 times at least non-sexually. That doesn't mean you can go 10. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, right? But make sure that's what your wife needs. But learn the art of non-sexual touching, because that's a gift. Ask your wife if this is something that she needs, if that's a little bit confusing to you. Go on, keep going. All right. Pray with and for your wife. Pray with and for your wife. Ask your wife, what can I pray about for you today? When she comes in from work, tell her I prayed for you today. Better yet, at bedtime, when you're about to go to sleep, reach over and take her hand and just say, can I ask the Lord to bless our marriage? And she'll say yes. No wives. I've never heard a wife yet that said, no, I hate it when my husband prays with me. Just reach over and take her hand and just say something simple. Say, Lord, thank you for my wife and for our marriage. Bless us. In Jesus' name, amen. That was simple, wasn't it? she will love it. There's a lot of different forms of intimacy. Of course, we have sexual intimacy, we have emotional intimacy, and that's where you communicate, and that's really important to women. You have all these different forms of intimacy. Spiritual intimacy is one of those. It's very big, and a lot of couples they don't have that. They're missing out on it because they don't pray together. And once they start, they're like, wow, that's really good. It's like, yeah, we've been trying to tell you. Don't miss out on that. Number 7, help her around the house. Help her around the house. Now, you may be the man that takes care of everything around the house. You may do the laundry, the kitchen, the dishes, the cooking, all of it. But if you're not, generally speaking, a lot of the wives still do that role a bunch. And if that is her thing, serve her by helping her around the house.
So acts of service is my love language, and Trey's going to talk a lot about love languages later and explain all those, but acts of service is mine, and so him helping around the house is huge for me. When we were a young married couple, this is a true story, Trey came in one day and probably stepped over a big pile of toys, a big mess the kids had made. He was, working his way through the house to come find me, so there was toys in the floor, dishes in the sink that he walked past, and then he found me in the bedroom, and there was a pile of laundry on the bed, and we greeted each other, and he said, "How was your day? What can I do to help you?" And I was immediately irritated by that because I just expected him to see the mess in the floor, to see the dishes in the sink, to see the laundry on the bed, and to know what needed to be done. But I was missing the point. I was missing the fact that he was willing to help. So I had to learn when he asked, "What can I do to help?" just give him a job and he's going to be so happy to do it. And then tell him, "You did an awesome job. Thank you for helping me." And he's going to be happy to do it the next time. So if your husband asks what he can do to help around the house, just gladly give him a list. Give him some chores. If he doesn't ask, then maybe you need to just say, "Honey, it'd really help me a lot if you could do such and such." Guys, if you have little ones around the house, if your wife is busy all day taking care of little kids, she probably needs you to help around the house more than ever during this time, because kids are just mess magnets. They can just walk through a room and leave a trail of mess. And so, she may be nursing a baby, and that takes lots of time during the day. And she may not have time to get to all the things that she'd really like to get done around the house. She may be playing dress up. She may be building Legos. She may be coloring pictures. And that stuff is way more important right now than loading the dishwasher and dusting the furniture. So be patient during this time and help around the house more than ever, because that stage of life is going to pass all too quickly.
Yeah. Number 8, take an interest in something that your wife likes. When she comes home and you say, "How was your day?" don't say that just because you're supposed to say something. Say it and then listen to what she says. "How was your day?" "It was good." "What are you doing at work right now?" And then listen. Take a general interest in what's going on in her world. If it's hobbies that she's got, take an interest in her hobbies. I don't know, if she likes to play golf and you don't, go ride with her in the cart. If she likes a TV show, sit down and watch her show with her, but take an interest in things your wife likes to do. You don't always have to, participate in with it unless she just says, "Hey, would you do this with me?" But at least take an interest in what your wife likes to do. Be able to communicate about it. Be a part of her world. Don't just expect her to be a part of your world. Number 9, be the spiritual leader in the home. I think it's interesting, guys, we give you that job because God gave you that job. A lot of times in our day and times, we just kind of leave it to mom to do all that kind of stuff. God says in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, "Fathers, train your children." And he's not talking just hitting a ball or catching a ball or whatever it is, shooting a ball. As a dad, we are good at that. We're good at teaching our kids to hit balls, shoot balls, and throw balls, or whatever it is, athletically. We're not always as good spiritually at teaching our kids morals and values, but that's really the more important things. Our kids will grow up, as much as we'd love for someday our kid to be some great college or professional star, 99.9% of all our kids are going to grow up. I'd much rather be my kids to be kids that have good morals and Christian values than a kid that can shoot free throws or hit a baseball. We love going to baseball games that our son plays. Love it. We love when he hits that ball. We love talking about, did you see this play? We love when he's catching passes and catching touchdown passes on the football team. But we have told him lots of times, as much as we like that, we would much rather you be a good Christian kid with good morals and good values. We are much more proud of that than we ever are anything you do academically on your report card or athletically on a baseball field. And so it all starts at the top. And as a father, your job is to teach that. Yeah, use opportunities of, hey, I got too much change back, to say, instead of saying, hey, we just made $10, let's go get shakes. Instead, you go, hey, they gave me too much change back. I need to go run this back in. Or when someone comes to the door and you tell your kids, hey, we don't lie in this house, and someone comes to the door on a Sunday afternoon and you're trying to take a nap and you look out the window and you go, hey, kids, tell them I'm not here. I don't want to talk to them. What you've done is you told your kids, yes, we do lie in this house. So model the values and integrity you want them to have. That's very, very important. Number 10, value your marriage. Value your marriage. As men, we value a lot of stuff. I value my cars. I value my old pickup truck. I love my old pickup truck. I value my home. I value my job. But really, the most valuable thing I have is my marriage. Really is. Most valuable is my marriage, my relationships. Because I could lose everything else, and if I still got my marriage, I'm all right. Does that make sense? I'd rather be without a job than without a wife. But we tend to not think of it that way. Value your marriage. I knew a guy that his whole life was about cars. Car shows this, car show that, this car show, going to take this car to this show. Had a garage full of trophies. You come to his house, you know where he wanted you to go? Come out in my garage and look at my trophies and look at my cars. His marriage fell apart. A lot of reason was he spent more time and was more interested in his cars than his wife. I still remember the time when he took all his trophies and threw them in a dumpster. The things he had thought was the most important to him. And he realized, hey, those things don't matter. It's not about cars and stuff. It's about relationships. There's nothing more important than relationships. And if you're married, you do everything you can to build a good marriage. All right, let's talk to the wives for a second. Now, the husbands are going, I am glad that's done. Talk to me. Do we need a quick break? Quick. Are we doing good? What do we think? It's going to be Keep going. She said keep going. We're going to keep going just for...
If you need a break, you're not going to hurt our feelings. Just go.
Yeah, we're going to keep going, and then we'll take a good break, because during the next break, we're going to give you a little homework assignment that y'all can sit in the pew together. So let's talk about wives. Husbands are going, yes, I've been waiting for this part. 1 Peter chapter 3. Let's look at the wives part. Now, Peter writes, and he says, your beauty should not just come from your outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles, the wearing of gold jewelry, and fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle, quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. Meaning, I think Peter knew, even during that time, that it's very important for women to look nice. Want to have their hair done before they leave. They want to have some makeup on before they leave. They want to look nice. That outward looking nice on the outside is important. They want to have a nice shirt, whatever it is, a nice pair of shoes. And Peter goes, hey, it's not just about the outside. It's the inside. It's what makes you beautiful. It's the inside that's what makes you pretty. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. But let's give you 10 things, and we're going to start with you the same way we did the guys. Never stop pursuing your husband. Now, your husband did things to win you. He sent you notes. He opened doors for you. We named off all those things, action things. But you did some action things to win him too. Pre-marriage, think back for a second. I'm going to name off 3 or 4 things right here, and you're going to go, oh yeah, I remember that. You cooked for him. Remember that? You found out what his favorite food, whether you could cook or not. You were going to try to make his favorite food or his favorite dessert. And you may have failed, but it was just kind of like, hey, because that was important to him. He still likes it when you do that, right? You bragged on him a lot. You told him he was strong. You told him he was handsome. You probably told him you liked his pickup truck. Whatever it was, you just made him feel awesome because you were always saying nice things about him. He still likes that. You remember when you went on dates and he would come by to pick you up? And you would come out from getting ready. You spent 2 hours getting ready for this date. And you would come out and walk into the room, and the first time he'd see you after you'd been getting ready for 2 hours, you were hoping that he would say one word. Remember what it was? Wow. You just wanted him to, wow, she looks awesome. He still likes it when you go out on a date. For you to gussy up, that's a little old-fashioned word, isn't it? For you to look good, for you to walk out knowing, hey, you know what it is that that you have in your closet that he thinks you look good in, and you've chose to put that on for the date, and he goes, wow. Wowie. That's a good thing. He's still visual. That's still important to him. You know what else you did? You flirted with him. You wanted him to know you liked him, so you flirted with him a lot. And you know what? He still likes when you flirt with him. He ain't dead. He still likes it, So don't stop doing those things just because you've caught him. Just because you're married to him, don't come along and go, well, why do I still need to flirt with him? And why do I still need to wow him? And why do I still need to do this? Because continue to pursue your husband just like you did before you were married. Did you want to add anything to that? Okay. Never use the silent treatment. That's a favorite for some ladies. And especially it seems like in new marriages. The silent treatment it's one of those connect the dot. Your husband doesn't have a clue what's wrong with you. You really don't. And you think he should figure it out, but he don't know. And it's terrible. It's a terrible form of communication. You hadn't talked all morning. He says, hey, babe, is there something wrong? And you answer with no, which means yes, but he's really confused because you said no. And he's like, I don't understand anything that's going on. She said it in such a way it sounded like something's wrong, but she said no. And you go all day long, no, nothing's wrong with me. And then finally, when you break down and say something, you go, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. And I mean, his head's over here going, if I just knew, I'd try to fix it, Because men aren't that way, so be careful with the silent treatment. Silent treatment is just not a good form of communication. We did meet a lady once at a workshop not long ago. She came up to us and she said, I talk all day. I talk from the second I get up till the second I go to sleep. I talk nonstop. I talk in the morning. I talk in the afternoon. I talk at night. And she said, and my husband loves when I give him the silent treatment. If that's your marriage, then maybe a silent treatment's a good thing every now and then. Number 3, give your husband lots of praise publicly and privately. This is really important, especially if your husband lists off, if he fills out his list in a minute and admiration and praise is on there, man, you better underline this one right here because I want you to understand, ladies, you don't get this, but you have a lot of power in our world as husbands. And let me explain this. For a husband, our self-esteem often rises and falls on whether or not you're giving us praise or being critical of us. You following? So if you're over here telling us that we're awesome and we're a good dad and we do a good job taking care of this and that and we did good on this, you're going to be married to the super husband that just does everything awesome because that's what he thinks because you're telling him that. But if you spend all your time telling him what he does wrong and what you don't like, instead of building him up, you're tearing him down, you're going to wonder why can't he ever seem to get anything done? Why can't he ever seem to feel good about getting out and doing this or doing that? You got to give your husband lots of praise, publicly and privately. Brag on him. Brag on him around your friends. Brag on him where he can hear it. Yeah, my wife said something the other day. We were standing around after church on a Wednesday night, and I had on a new shirt, and somebody said something. I like that new shirt. You look good in that color. And I don't know why she said it. She said, he looks good in every color. Man, I floated to the car that night. I was like, yeah, did you hear that? You know, because, man, there's nothing better than your wife saying something nice about you. Give your husband lots of praise, publicly and privately. Tell him he's a good dad. He'll be down there wrestling in the floor with the kids 10 minutes later because he'll be going, man, I'm a good dad. He needs to hear that. Things that he does naturally. You just need to tell him, hey, you did a great job mowing the grass. The yards look fantastic. Whatever it is that he does, let him know that he did a great job. He loves to hear that. I have a friend that asked me a while back. He said, hey, I'm putting up fence in my backyard. You got any time this week to come help me put up some fence? And I said, yeah. I said, it'll get me out of the office. I'll be there in the morning. What time we start? And he said, we're starting at 8 o'clock. He hadn't done a thing. And I said, all right, I'll be there. So I get over to his house, and they're excited about new fence. And we start just setting posts in holes and going along. His wife comes out, and these have been my friends forever. I mean, we've known them 30 years. But she comes out and she goes, now I'm noticing that these poles aren't very straight over here. And I said, yeah. I said, we just got them sitting in there. We actually hadn't put any concrete in there yet, but we're going to get them straight. She goes, okay. We went back in the house. Came out about 10 minutes later, and we've put in some poles, and we've done this. And she comes out, and she goes, now, I noticed over here that this is real crooked. And I said, yeah. Or Paul said, her husband said, yeah. He said, we realize that too. We're going to fix that before we move on. And so she comes out about 4 or 5 times within the first hour about things that she wanted to make sure we'd notice it was wrong. And while it didn't bother me, we were still working, I thought, I'm going to have some fun with this. So she comes out again, and she said, hey, did y'all? And I said, hold on just a second. And she said, what? And I said, you've been out here about 4 times, and you have yet to tell us we're doing an awesome job. She said, well, y'all are. You should know that. And I said, no, we don't know that. We need to know we're doing an awesome job. You told us some stuff that needs fixed, and we're okay with that. But we need to hear we're doing awesome because it makes us want to work longer. She said, I can do that. And I said, okay. So she leaves, go back in the house. She comes out a little bit later, and I really kind of forgot about that conversation. She comes out, she looks right there, and she goes, this may be the straightest fence I've ever seen. And her husband, get this, steps back, and he goes, that is a pretty straight fence. She goes back in the house, and he says, all right, well, let's keep going. So we keep working a little bit longer. She comes out a little bit later, brings us a cup of coffee, and while she's out there, she goes, are y'all sure y'all don't do this professionally? Because this is a great looking fence. And I said, thank you, I needed to hear that. And he looked at the fence, and he goes, that is a good-looking fence, you know. She goes back in the house, and he goes, all right, coffee break's over. Let's go back to work, you know. And I mean, he's just turning into Mr. Fence Builder because she's actually coming out and saying nice things. And she comes out another time. I remember thinking, man, we're never going to get anything done if she keeps coming out here. But she comes out, and she goes, you guys are maybe the fastest fence builders I have ever seen. Y'all have already got 2 sections done. This is awesome. And I just wanted to tell you this before I went to work. And I remember thinking, yay, she's going to work. We get some stuff done. But her husband looks back, and he goes, we are making good time here, yeah. Let's work some more, you know. And she goes to work. 30 minutes later, he's old school. He reaches in his pocket, and he opens his flip phone because he'd had a notification. Kind of grins, closes it, puts it back in pocket. And I said, who was that? And he said, that was Stacy. And I said, what does she want now? And he said, she can tell from her office across town that the fence looks amazing. He said, can you work through lunch today? And I remember thinking, man, we have created a monster over here with Mr. Super Fence Builder now. But all it took was just a little bit of praise from her to all of a sudden, he was eating this up. This is what he needed to hear, and it was healthy. That was a good thing. I'm serious, ladies, praise your husband. My friend Haley, the guy I run with, Randy, her husband, his wife, Haley, about once a week, once a month, she throws something on Facebook randomly about, I married the best looking man in the world. Or, my husband is the best dad ever. And every time that's up there, we go run the next day, I guarantee you, we weren't to mile 1, and Randy's going, did you see what my wife wrote about me on Facebook? You know, and he's got an extra spring in his step. Man, he eats that up, and he treats her like a queen. He's good to her. But she knows how to praise him. Give your husband a lot of praise. He's motivated by it. I always like to tell this story. If you said it, this is one of our favorite stories. But a while back, we clean house on weekends when we're home because my wife likes her house clean, and I try to help her, and I have the things I'm supposed to do. And here a while back, we were cleaning house, and I have my list. She has her list. I knocked mine out quick, and she still had a bunch to go through on her list. She had not. One of them was dusting. And I looked down, and she had set out her dust rag, and she set out all the stuff for dusting, but she was a long way from that on her list, and I thought, well, I can help her. It will not kill me to dust a house. And I hate dusting. But I picked up the rag, and I started dusting. I'm going to help her do some of her list. And as I'm dusting the living room, I catch out of the corner of my eye her come through the living room, and she stops and just kind of like this is looking at me. And I kind of turned around trying to figure out, am I doing something good or am I doing something bad, right? And so I said, what? And she said, you're dusting? I said, yeah, I got through with my list. I thought I could help you dust. She said, you never dust. And I said, well, I'm dusting today. It's all right, isn't it? She goes, well, I just want you to know that I have never found you sexier than you are right now. Ever. And I said, really? And she said, oh yeah. I dusted the entire house that day. There was not one speck of dust anywhere in that house. And every time she came through a room that I was dusting, I would flaunt my sexiness everywhere for her to see. All it took was a little bit of praise, and man, I was hooked because we were just kind of playing along. Number 4, put your marriage on the front burner. I'm going to put 4 and 5 up here together and mention it real quick, and I'm going to turn it over to Lee. Put your marriage on the front burner. One of the greatest things that God made are mamas. And there is no greater ministry in this world than the ministry of motherhood. And it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we don't, in any form or fashion, to make light of the fact that kids are valuable and important and special. At the same time, we want to remind you, especially mamas, because God created mamas with such a strong pull toward those kids, that God first made you a wife before He made you a mama. And that your first role is that. You have to wear dual hats. Does that make sense? And that's not always easy. But what happens a lot of time in marriage, especially marriage, early in marriage when new little ones are on the way, is sometimes mamas unintentionally will take off their wife hat and they'll put on their mama hat and they forget to put their wife hat back on. Does that make sense? They kind of move their marriage to the back burner. And they'll go, hey, I need to be a mama right now. I'll go back to being married sometime later. And that's hard. It really is. That's hard on your marriage. And while, yes, kids are very important, we've had couples that have told us, one of these days our kids will be out of the house and we'll go back to being married. We'll have empty nest. Did you know that there is a huge spike in the divorce rate for people who've been married 22, 23, 24 years old? And it took them a while to figure that out. You know why that is? When the kids all leave the home, and all of a sudden they look across the table from one another and they've had zero relationship with each other without the kids. There have been no dates, there have been no husband-wife, there's been very little intimacy, and all of a sudden they have empty nest and they have empty marriage. And they look across the table and go, I don't even know who you are. I'm not sure I like you. We've known couples that have been married 22, 23 years that have divorced when their last one leaves the house because all of a sudden their marriage that is revolved 100% around their kids, all of a sudden their kids aren't there and they don't know what to do. All we're saying is make sure. It's important to be mama and daddy. Very important. It is also important to be husband and wife during that time. Very important. Take over.
Ladies, as moms, we want to give our kids lots of opportunities to develop their interests, right? We'll get them in piano lessons or some kind of music lessons, maybe art lessons, maybe they do gymnastics or play different sports, and we want them to find their niche. But with all of their different activities, we get busier and busier. We're driving them here and there. We're going to recitals. We're volunteering for concession stands. We're volunteering for PTA. You just go down the list. Maybe you work full time. You've still got to do the cooking, cleaning, shopping, laundry, and you find yourself dropping in bed exhausted every night. And so why am I talking about dropping in bed exhausted and putting your marriage on the front burner? We brought a book. One of the books we brought is called Sheet Music by Dr. Kevin Lehman. And when we first got this book, I started flipping through, just kind of, looking at the title chapters. And one of the chapters was titled Sex's Number One Enemy. And I thought, what does he think is the number one enemy? So I flipped over to that chapter and kind of started scanning. And it didn't take me long to realize that he was talking about busyness or weariness. We just find ourselves going 90 to nothing and dropping in bed exhausted every night. And as a wife, we need to remember that likely our husband's number one need, as we talked about earlier, is sexual fulfillment. And if we're dropping in bed exhausted every night, we're probably not remembering to put our marriage on the front burner. So while all of the activities we may be doing are really good, sometimes we might need to reprioritize our schedule and make sure we're making plenty of time, to meet his needs and to still be a wife as well as a mom.
Good point. Very good point. Number 6, dress with an aim to please your husband. If your husband has on his list an attractive spouse, if that's important to him, it doesn't mean you have to be who you were when you married at 18, 29 years ago, but make the best of what you have and who you are, and take time when you do go on a date to dress up or wow or whatever it is, to where he just like, wow. Ask him before you go on a date, what do I have in my closet that you think looks really good on me, and I'll wear that for our date tonight. So dress with an aim to please your husband. And it's easy sometimes, not just out on a date, but have you noticed pre-marriage, you dress up for your spouse everywhere. He's coming over, she's coming over, I got to put on, a clean shirt, whatever it is. And then you get married, and what do? They only see you dress what? Down. Can't wait till I get home to put on my sweats and my Winnie the Pooh sweatshirt, or whatever, my oversized shirt and my socks. And so in marriage, sometimes the only time your spouse sees you is not when you're dressing up, but when you're dressing down. And so if that's important, take time to work hard at dressing up. That's why even if it's a quick trip somewhere, wear something that you think he will or she will like. Number 7, take an interest in something that he likes to do. Meaning, if he is interested in something, be able to communicate about that, whether it's deer hunting or what. We met a lady the other day. It was kind of neat. She said, I can't get my husband to go on a date with me. All he ever wants to do is deer hunt. And I said, well, have you gone with him? And she said, why would I want to do that? And I said, has he asked you? And she said, well, he used to, but he finally gave up, when I told him no 40 times. And I said, why don't you just ask him if you can go deer hunting with him? And I think her response was something along the lines of, you didn't hear what I said. I want him to go on a date with me. I don't want to go deer hunting with him. I said, but go with him. Don't complain. Go have fun. Put on your best attitude. And then when you're done, ask him if he'll go with you on a date sometime, to a concert, whatever it is that you want to do. That's what she was wanting to do, go to a concert. Got an email from her about a month or two later, and she said, I went with my husband. I dreaded every moment of it. and it wound up actually being fun. She said it was a morning that wasn't too cold. We saw lots of little animals come into the feeder. She said we sat in a blind. We had a great time just spending time together. She said, I plan to go back. And she said, I wanted you to know that I asked my husband if he would go to a concert with me, and he said yes. And I thought, give and take sometimes in marriage. You taking an interest in what your husband likes is very important to him. Think about for a second whatever his hobby is, whatever he's interested in. I find it interesting that he's probably building some of his greatest memories doing whatever that is. Don't you want to be a part of those memories? Lee has learned to love baseball, in a sense that hitting a little white ball, she's learned to love baseball. We go to baseball fields all over. Anytime we go to a workshop, if there's a baseball game going somewhere, we get to go to all these major league stadiums. She's learned to love baseball because her kids and her husband like baseball. Now she beats us in fantasy baseball every year, and we're trying to figure out how to kick her out of our league, But learn to take an interest in things your husband likes to do. Can you imagine a guy coming in to his wife and going, the lake's outside of town. We've always talked about getting our own boat. We could spend some time together on the lake, getting a boat. And Saturdays we could spend inner tubing and just hanging out as a family. Doesn't that sound fun?
Oh, it does, but honey, you know how bad I sunburn, and man, the mosquitoes, they're just so bad right now. Let's do something else.
And so he just kind of casts that aside, and a month or two passes, and he loves to ski, Goes with the guys every year and comes into his wife, and he goes, hey, this year, instead of going with the guys, how about we go together to the mountains, and we'll go ski, and we'll get a place for the weekend, sit in a hot tub, and have some fun skiing.
Well, that altitude, that high altitude and that dry air, it really bothers me, and I think I'm just getting too old to ski. Let's find something else.
Maybe a month or so later, he comes in and says, hey, I got a Groupon by email today. We can go to Vegas. Flights are free. Or we just have to pay for our flights. Rooms are free. We'll go catch a couple of shows one weekend and come home. Doesn't that sound like fun?
But flying? Oh, honey, I hate to fly.
So you kind of see how that goes. Everything he brings up, and he finally kind of gives up. But can you imagine, now we'll talk about this next session after a good break here in a second, how affairs oftentimes start is because this same guy, maybe he goes to work and he goes to his coworker and he just simply says something about, the lake outside of the town, and she says something like,
oh, I love going to the lake. I just wish I knew somebody that had a boat.
And maybe a week later he says something about going skiing, how much he loves to ski, and she also says,
oh, I go skiing every winter. I wouldn't miss it.
And it's not I wish she was my wife, but maybe it starts with, I wish my wife was more like her. And whatever need it is, whether it's over on the husband side we talked about earlier with communication or affection or whatever it is, or if it is taking an interest in something he likes to do, when you're not meeting your spouse's need and somebody else shows up in their world and starts to do that very innocently, that's how affairs always start. Affairs always start with, we're just friends. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But take an interest in something that your spouse likes to do. Number 8, strive to be beautiful inside and out.
Trey read the verse a little bit earlier from 1 Peter 3 about your beauty comes from the inside. Sometimes, girls, we just need to do a little attitude check. I know I do. Make sure you're not using that tone of voice, that you're speaking respectfully and gently. It says, a gentle and quiet spirit. So just make sure you're being as beautiful on the inside as you strive to be on the outside.
Number 9, pray with and for your husband. So tell your husband, I prayed for you today, or is there anything I can pray about? Or grab your husband's hand one night and say, hey, I'm going to say a prayer for our marriage. Lord, thank you for my husband and for our marriage. Bless us in Jesus' name, amen. That's a healthy thing to do. Number 10, flirt. Flirt, you already mentioned that. Yeah, but your husband likes it well enough, we're going to mention it twice. All right? Your husband likes it when you flirt with him. Flirting is healthy. You know, we talk about the difference between being roommates and soulmates. God did not create marriage so you could have a roommate to pay bills with and raise kids with. God created marriage so you can have a soulmate. Roommates, there's very little intimacy or no intimacy, and there's no flirting. Soulmates flirt, meaning they can still open doors for one another. They can still do things to flirt with one another. That's healthy. I love seeing couples that still flirt. That's a very healthy thing to do. Now, how do you flirt? Sometimes people, we actually had somebody ask us one time, said, I forgot how to flirt with my husband. And we thought, how do you forget how to flirt? So if you're here, we'll throw some things. Send him a text message, a flirty text message. He loves that. Send him a text message that says, thinking about you. Send him a text message. It's on the flirty side. Send him one that says, ooh, I just almost couldn't let you go to work today. Do like the lady we met the other day. I loved it. She and her husband came up and she said, I just want you to know we have more fun. She said, about once a week, I lay out something on the bed that is very lacy from the special drawer. And hopefully you have a special drawer. And she said, I take a picture of it laying on the bed, and I send it to my husband once a week, and I say, I'm wearing this tonight to bed. And I send it to my husband at work. She said, 2 things are going to happen. They always do. Number 1, he will come home early. And number 2, he will come home in a good mood. That every time. And that's when he popped up and said, and I can't concentrate at work all day long. But he was loving every minute of it. But use this to flirt with your husband. Send him a message.
If you send those kinds of messages, make sure they're just going to your husband and not the other 6 people that are in the group.
Yeah, that can be a little embarrassing, huh?
The family group chat.
Yeah. I'm glad she accepted that now. So, yeah, use your phone to flirt. Kiss him at a stoplight. After sometime maybe he's giving you the 7-second hug. Sometime or another when he comes from home from work or from the store, maybe he's been gone outside and he's come in for a second. Give him a real kiss. Now we, as a guy, we know the difference between a kiss and a real kiss. Give him a real kiss, and he'll back up and go, "Whoa, that was a real kiss, wasn't it?" I really like that. That's good stuff. Scoot over next to him, really, really close. Take your foot under the table and rub his leg, and again, make sure it's his leg, not somebody else's leg. Flirt with your husband. He likes that. That's a healthy thing to do. So here's 3 things you need to do. We'll close this out, and I'm going to give you a quick homework assignment. Number one, forgive. Be a good forgiver. In marriage, you got to be a good forgiver. Meaning, there's some people that really don't understand forgiveness. All right? There's some people that don't. There's some folks that I just sometimes want to go, do you not understand forgiveness? Now, let me explain what this means. Think about this for a second. God treats you better than you deserve every day. You agree with that, don't you? Every day, God's treating you better than you deserve. The interesting thing is He expects you, because He does that for you, He expects you to treat others better than they deserve every day, including your spouse. God forgives you every day, and He expects you to forgive your spouse every day. When you tell God, oh, I made a mistake and probably shouldn't have done that, He didn't come back with, let me tell you 20 things you've done wrong in the past 10 years. He doesn't bring up old infractions. Be a good forgiver. Sometimes your spouse may not know they did anything to hurt your feelings. Forgive them anyway. Well, what if they don't ask? Forgive them anyway. Be a good forgiver. Your marriage will be so much better if you learn to be a good forgiver. Forgive them before they ask. Well, they know that I'm mad. They know that hurt my feelings, and at some point He's going to... Go ahead and forgive them. Maintain your marriage. That's what you're doing this weekend. Water your own yard, your own grass. Look for ways. Date. Understand that love is a choice and not a chance. Meaning, you got every morning you got to choose to get up. Every morning you get out of bed, and you're not going to feel in love. So choose love. Every day I get up and I choose love. I'm going to choose to love my wife on days when I don't even feel it. Because love is not a chance. It's not an accident. Honestly, yeah, I accidentally fell in love. No, you don't accident. You fell in love. Love is a choice. It's something you choose to do every day. You don't accidentally fall in love. You accidentally step in stuff, nobody, does that make sense? I accidentally stepped in love, I guess I have to love. And then people go, I fell out of love. I just don't feel it anymore. Not if love is a choice. Think about that. Can you fall out of love if love is something you choose to do every day? Somebody come in and say, I've fallen out of love with my wife. So you're choosing not to love her. No, I just don't feel like I do. No, love is not a feel. Love is a choice. So if you don't feel like you love your wife anymore, it's because you're just saying you don't want to love her anymore. No, that makes me feel bad, look bad. Well, love is a choice. So choose to love her or him. In your book, you have, and I didn't bring mine, do you see the page? Can I borrow your book? You're awesome. Okay. Date night ideas. This is awesome. We love this, okay? Date night ideas. Get a chance, look through here and circle a couple that you like and let your spouse circle a couple they like. During the break, we're going to take a 15-minute break. We're going to start back at 11:30. We'll be through by 12 in order to have pizza. But during this break time, I want you to go over, after you get a cup of coffee and go to the bathroom, I want you to go back over the 10 things for husbands, 10 things for wives. I want you to circle. Ask your husband, ask your wife. Husbands, you start first. You ask your wife, honey, what are 3 things on this list of 10 that you would like me to really work on? Wives, don't say 3. How about all 10 of them? We're trying to make things better here, okay? And then wives, you take your side and go, honey, what are 3 things that you would really like me to work on this list? And husbands, you circle 3 things. And when your spouse circles those 3 things, go to work. That's your goal for the next however many months. You say, all right, I'm going to work really hard on these 3 things. And then the very next page, I'll find it. Give me a second. All right, let's back up. Is it pre? There it is. It's this one right here with this couple drinking coffee looking at each other. This is the one. You got to talk about needs. This is important. So take a second. And if you want to, for fun, if you have time, then I like to do this. Guess what your spouse, I like to guess what Lee's husbands, guess what your wife's top 5 are. And then let her fill in what they really are. See how close you were. And then wives, you can guess what your husbands are up here. And then let your husband write what 5. Just do 5. You don't have to do 10. Number 1 through 5. Here's my top 5. Does that make sense? And so by the time we get done with this break, or if you can't quite get it all done, we'll work on it some at lunch as well. You should circle those 3 of those 10 things and do this sheet right here. Okay? We are going to start back at 11:30 sharp with an awesome video that I forgot to show y'all a while ago. And see y'all then.